Welcome back to Roundtail Restoration, everybody. My name is Chris. This is a Zenith Stromberg 175 CD carburetor from a 1964 Triumph TR4. I've taken these apart, rebuilt them, cleaned them up and all that good stuff. One of the last things I need to do is centralize the jets. I got a lot of problems with that, so if you do too, this is the video for you. I'll show you how I get it done. Thanks for watching. Let's get it sorted. So this is the third of a three-part series where I take the carburetor all apart in part one, put it all back together in part two, and now centralize the jet in part three. So if you want to watch either of the first two, there's a link below in the description, or you can wait for the pop-ups at the very end of the video. So let's get to centralizing the jet. So we have the carburetor here, various pieces, parts. This is the whole jet assembly. You got your adjusting screw, the jet bushing, the jet itself, and the spring that allows it to get tensioned up in there, and then all the washers and everything that kind of hold it in place. In the carburetor itself, this is the bottom of the air valve here, and if you can see down in there, this guy right here is the needle that's attached to that air valve, and that needle is very slightly tapered, skinnier at the bottom, gets thicker as it goes up, and that taper is dependent on needle size and everything, and you can get different ones of those to tune your carburetor and everything like that, but there is default ones that I have in here for this model and the Triumph TR4 itself. So as that needle tapers and gets thicker towards the top, what that needle does is that falls inside this jet hole here, and that's a pretty skinny hole but constant. So as that needle falls in, the needle takes up and gets thicker, the needle takes up more of that jet, and as it draws out, like if you're under acceleration, the vacuum from the engine is going to pull that air valve up. That's going to pull that needle out of that little jet there and make that hole essentially bigger and allow more fuel to flow, and that's kind of how the carburetor works. It's important that this needle fall in that jet and be able to have a nice fluid motion like you can see it right now without the jet in there, so that this doesn't get bound up and get stuck and then screw with your performance. So the workshop manual shows you how to do this, and I'm going to kind of do a variation of that. So right now, as you can see, I've got the jet completely out, and the first thing you want to do is make sure that that air valve falls and hits the bridge, and the bridge of the carburetor is essentially, if I can do this with one hand here, the bridge of the carburetor is this guy down here where it kind of goes all the way across there, nice flat spot. That air valve should smack that bridge with a nice satisfying clunk like that. Now what I found is the diaphragm that's up in here and this cap can interfere with that falling. As you tighten these four screws, what was happening to me is I was having that air valve bind up without the jet installed at all, and that essentially kind of messed me up for a little while. It didn't make sense because I had the jet in there and nothing was working. So I ended up loosening these screws and kind of playing with it and getting it situated and spinning the cap and everything and getting everything aligned so that once I finally got our four screws tight, I could still get it fall and give me that clunk. The other thing that you want to make sure of is your damper valve here, your piston. You want to make sure that that thing's not bent, because that could also mess up. So when I did it the first time, just to tighten the cap, I had this thing out to make sure it fell, and that put that guy in and then made sure it still fell. So if it doesn't do that, you might want to look at replacing that cap there, because that may be bent. So now that we've got that set up, what the workshop manual tells you to do is get the jet all together and get it assembled and put the jet bushing in until it's completely tight. So that's what we're going to do. So out of all these pieces here, you've got your jet itself and the spring for it, and then a copper washer or brass washer. Then you got your jet bush, and that one's got a little O-ring in it. So make sure that O-ring is there and refreshed. And then get that on there, and that O-ring kind of helps keep that together. And then you have a regular white metal washer, and that's all going to fit up in there. And the deal here is that that'll float around in there pretty good. I don't know how well you can see in that, but that'll slide back and forth and everything like that, and it doesn't center. It's not self-centering. It's not machine tolerance wise enough to be self-centered. So the jet's in there. Then we'll take the bushing screw here, get that guy in there, and essentially what the workshop manual tells you to do is fully tighten the jet assembly. You've also got your jet adjusting screw, so we're going to get that in there and get it started, but we're not going to do anything with it yet. So we'll go ahead and we'll fully tighten that jet bushing. And with that fully tightened, the air valve's probably not going to fall. Now nice and easy. Yeah, so you don't hear a little clink in there. So now what the workshop manual tells you to do is take the adjusting screw, and that's going to push up on the jet and that spring, and you're going to be able to just barely see the top of the jet cross over the top of that bridge. Now, I'm not going to be able to zoom in far enough to show you that. Right here is the jet. You can see the larger brass ring is the bushing, and the inner brass ring is the jet itself. Try to illustrate here as it crosses the bridge. So you can just screw it up. And you want to look straight down on it and put your eyeball right in the plane of the bridge. And that looks like that's right about there. So now that jet is just barely crossing the height of the bridge, and that's what the workshop manual is trying to achieve there. So that's done, and now you can see that that air valve doesn't really fall at all. So now what it says is to slacken off the jet assembly approximately 1/2 of a turn, and that should release that jet bush up there and allow it to kind of float around. So we'll go ahead and take this bushing screw here. We're going to back off 1/2 a turn, give or take. And that should have loosened up that bushing in there, but in my experience, it really doesn't. So now it tells you to allow the air valve to fall, and the needle will then center in the orifice. Well, obviously that didn't do it by itself. So there's a couple things we can do here. One, and then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to remove the damper screw, and I'm going to press down on the air valve, and that's going to force that guy all the way in there. And I'm also going to get a ball beam or a soft mallet here real quick and kind of knock this around a little bit just to hopefully loosen that bush up. So I'll go grab that real quick. I'll be back, and then we'll go ahead and push down on the jet, and hopefully that'll kind of self-center it. So in the process of knocking that around, that kind of self-centered it, so that's good. So let's see if it does it and does it by itself. Yep, it does. So you can see that that's falling and clicking right now. So then it says, slowly tighten the assembly, checking frequently that the needle remains free in the orifice. And you can do it like I'm doing it here with my finger, or you can also use the little lifting tool over here. So now we're going to slowly tighten, and if it gets bound up, we'll loosen it, knock it around a little bit, push the jet down if I have to, and kind of just do a bunch of iterations here to try to get this thing then fully centered. Still good. Still good. Still good. I think that's just about tight. And there you go. So now that jet is centered. And if I were to take this off, I could show you where it was centered, but instead I'm going to show you a picture, because now that I got this set up, I don't want to do that. So I've got another carburetor that I haven't centered the jet on yet. I'll show you some pictures on that to show you what the jet looks like, try to get some close-ups for you, and then move on from there. So close up in here is the jet and the assembly. Right in the center there, that center hole, that's where the needle is going to go in, and the brass ring that surrounds that is the jet itself. And then you've got a little brake, and that little brake, and then the next brass ring is the jet bushing. So now this one looks pretty centered, and it is, but let me loosen it up for you real quick, and I'll kind of jiggle it around and show you how far off center it can get. So if you look, you can see how off centered that bush is towards the bottom of your screen there. And that, while this is obviously an extreme case, it just illustrate for you how much play you do have in there, and the fact there'd be no way for that needle to fall into that jet smoothly. All right, everybody, that's all I got. Thanks so much for watching. Leave a comment below. Tell me what you think. Well, this is part 3, essentially in a 2-part series with taking the carburetor all apart and then putting it all back together, getting everything all cleaned up and all that kind of stuff. So if you want to watch them, YouTube will put them up here in just a second. But otherwise, that's all I got. Thanks so much for watching. Have a good rest of your day. Cheers.